Tighten your lines as we get ready to sail the seven seas on the Political Pirate Podcast. Join Captain Ted Yoho and the salty dog John Martin as they search far and wide for the greatest treasure of all, the truth. From local Florida news to nationwide stories and the globe beyond, we've got it all mapped out. Now here's your hosts, the salty dog John Martin and Captain Ted Yoho.
Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the 3 Ps on this second day of 2026, Ted. Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year to you and everybody else. And I tell you what, it's going to be the best year yet. And, we look forward to getting into the show. And, it started off with the swearing in of the first Muslim mayor of New York City, the youngest mayor in over a century, and the first immigrant in a long, long, long time. So it's going to be a great year in New York. We look forward to it.
And on top of all that, Ted, as we were coming on the Zoom here, we just heard from our producer that he, over New Year's Eve, is a father for the second time now. So congratulations to Zach out there.
Absolutely.
And his growing family. We need sponsors to help support Zach, by the way.
That's right.
Come sponsor our show. If for no other reason, we got a growing family here at the 3 Ps. But
right.
I'm grateful for 2025. I thought it was overall it was a good year for me and my family. I think in a lot of ways it was a good year for the country, and we're going to talk about that. And 2026 kind of going to be the theme of the show today. I'm hopeful for 2026. What are your general thoughts about like 2025, your hopes for 2026 as we begin to get into this on the political side in here in just a moment?
Well, John, at my advanced age of almost 71, I'm just happy to make it through it. It was a great year. I mean, you look at all the changes that happened in America, and that political fight is ongoing. It'll always be ongoing. But the thing that we really need to do, and I'm happy for all the changes that happened with the Trump administration getting away from the DEI, wokeism, all that garbage that was tearing this country apart. Unfortunately, over 40%, close to 50% of the country thinks that was the right way to go. Hence, that's why you got mayors being elected in Washington and Washington State and the state of New York that are Democrat socialists. It's the next step before communism. And so there's half the nation that feels that way. And so what we have to do is stay steady on the keel. And the problem with America politics, I put a lot of time and thought into this, is we don't have a national agenda. It's 4 to 8 years at best is the direction of the country. And if you're driving a car or a boat, you've been in plenty of boats, John. If you don't know where your charts are taking you or where you want to go on the chart, you're all over. I mean, you're just like this. You're like the Jews in the desert. They wandered around for 40 years, but when they mapped the distance they had to travel, it's a 10-day mission. If they don't have the right map, you get lost and just wander. And I hope that 2026 is a year, a season, or a decade where they're focused on where the country goes, so we don't go back and forth like a rapidly swinging pendulum out of control.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the things that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to, like, you're talking about nautical charts and, with road maps and all that kind of stuff, is the most important thing on a map is not where you've been or where you're going. I mean, those are important, but the most important thing is where you actually are. That's why they show you that on the thing, because if you don't know where you are, it doesn't matter. You can't tell which way you're going because you don't know where you are. And I think that's a mistake we do as a nation sometimes, is we really don't assess where we are. We're either too worried about where we might be going or caught up in the past or something like that. And you need to take an assessment of kind of where you are, and then obviously where you've been and where you're going. And that's kind of what I think we're going to do in the show today.
Well, that's what you're right on right there, because you got to know where you are. You have to do an assessment, and then you have to plot where, or you have to not plot, you have to decide where you want to go. Then you plot out the course. And if that's what I see they don't do in DC. When I got up there, they're arguing over the FBI or the Epstein files, all this stuff that really, if you triage stuff out of a list of 20, those aren't even in the top 10. It's our debt, it's China, it's our energy, it was immigration. Trump's done a great job, but that's the temporary pause unless they codify this stuff into law. And if they codify it in law, John, take energy, for instance, and you've heard me talk about this before. Excuse me. If we had an energy policy that said America within 5 years needs to be energy secure, but not only just secure in 5 years from now, but projected out 25, 50 years in the future, it takes politics out of it because that's the goal. And the chore of Congress is decide how to get there. If you want to do green, great, but you get us to energy and security in the future. If you did that with the welfare system, with the immigration system, with our education system, and just go down the line, you have people in Congress that know what the goal is. They know where the end zone is, and they all work to get there. Right now, they don't know what they're shooting at, other than a new Congress starts in January, and they know September 30th they got to fund the country. But you look at the mess we're in; they're going to have the fight for the keeping the country open on January 30th. It comes to an end, the funding, and so they've got to start those silly fights all over.
Yeah, and that's a great point because it nobody's really talking about that much. It's like it's behind us or whatever.
Sure.
But it'll be interesting to see if we basically go back to square one like we did for like 40 some odd days before. I'm hoping we won't, but they probably will. You're probably right. So I picked out two things that I think from 2025 that signify kind of a highlight, and one of them somewhat of a low light, but also, if you want to call it that,
sure,
a downer. And these are just two things that I thought of, and people may or may not disagree. But on this first one, to me, the highlight of 2025, you could certainly say that the actual inauguration of President Trump. But what really sealed it for me, and probably sealed it for other people as like a low light, was when Donald Trump kind of gave what wasn't an official, State of the Union address. That comes in your second year, basically. But this little clip right here of Donald Trump speaking to a joint session of Congress, to me, really set the stage for the year that we've just come off of. Let's play it, and I'll get your thoughts on it in just a second.
Sure.
The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation. We must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president.
And Ted, that he was talking about the border and border security when he said they tell me basically it couldn't be solved and we had to do all these things, but turns out we just needed a new president. But you could put that on so many issues that have happened over the course of the last year. I just love, to me, that kind of just set up 2025 right there.
It really does, John. And it just changed. It was a new narrative. It was a new direction. And it was, matter of fact, we are going to do this. And it shows you that we can do these things. What's going to happen in the future, though, if that's not codified in the law that says America will have secure border, we will have a legal immigration system. If the next election, if Trump loses the midterm, this all stops. And this is why it is so important that you have a leadership that says, if the president could say, I want you to bring me I don't want to use the word comprehensive because that in Washington means it's not going to happen. I want you to bring me an immigration on border security, policies on border security, on immigration, on legal immigration, on a guest worker for farm workers. I want you to bring me the policy of that, and I will sign it into law. And that way, the next Congresses are kind of locked into that and get away from the executive orders. That sets the stage for a lot that's happened this year or last year, and it's something to build on this year. and we need to keep that momentum going.
Well, you mentioned about executive orders, and I agree 100% with what you said. But a lot of people don't really seem to understand this. A lot of what Donald Trump did at the border in his administration wasn't a bunch of new laws. It was actually, because you always hear before Donald Trump even got in office that our immigration system is broken. Even Republicans said that quite often. And I remember when I had my previous show, even before, like say before Donald Trump, I used to say it's not broken. We don't follow the laws that we have. And so people tend to think that Donald Trump did something radical on the border. And I guess it was radical in the sense that he actually followed existing law. Much of what Donald Trump has done that the courts are trying to chime in on is actually following existing law. Even what ICE is doing, even what the Border Patrol is doing, all of that stuff, it's not a bunch of new laws. It's existing law. And I think they say it all the time. Secretary Nome and our border czar and all that kind of stuff. They say it that if you don't like the law, change them. But we're going to enforce the laws on the books right now. And I think that is radical right there in a way.
Well, it's radical that somebody might follow the rule of law. Can you imagine that? That was one of my aggravations up there, because they're saying, well, we need more money. And Republicans are saying this too, John. We need more laws. We need to do this. And I'm like, you got the laws on the book, enforce them. But they all look for reasons not to follow the law, because that way it looks like they're working on something, and it's a mess if we follow the laws. In fact, Kevin McCarthy, he wanted me to vote for him for speaker. And, we had our discussion, and he told me he raised all this money. I said, that doesn't impress me, Kevin. I know you need a certain amount of money. He goes, well, Ted, I brought up 700 bills or over 700 bills that we passed in the House. And I'm like, Kevin, that doesn't impress me. Does the American people, do they need another 700 bills? I said, how about if we get rid of some? So, follow the laws that are already on the book, and let's get rid of some of these silly things.
Yeah, well, that reminds me of something I heard over the last couple of days. I was watching MSNB Now, or whatever the heck they're calling it, and they were talking about the Congress, and they were lamenting the fact that this Congress has passed the fewest bills in modern history, basically. And I got to thinking about it. First of all, the legislature didn't used to meet every year. I'm not saying they should go back to that. But to me, it's not about all the laws you pass, because I remember a friend of ours, and I'll let him remain anonymous. I don't want to pick on him, but a very good legislator for the state of Florida. I remember him and another, we had two kind of rookies a few years ago in our general area, and they came back, and the first thing they bragged about was, because I think they passed some thing a few years back where you can only introduce 6 bills if you're a senator or a member of the state legislature. And they were bragging about how 3 of theirs got taken up on the House floor and all that. And I raised my hand, and how the a-hole I could be sometimes. I said, well, I really want to hear about what the rules and regulations you took off the books, not the new ones you put on. That was my thing. And so the fact that Congress hasn't passed a bunch of new legislation potentially is a good thing.
That's cause for celebration right there. And maybe they should shut down more. Take instead of 40 days, go to 80 days or 6 months off. I think the country would benefit from that. We don't need this many more laws. And these programs, if you put the program in right, you don't need to be up there every year, for the same program. They should be on autopilot, and you need to monitor them at that point.
Yeah, I read some history about this one time, and I think Mr. Victor
That's
David
good that
Hanson,
you do that. That's good.
Yeah, every now and then. But I don't know if you've heard this, but Mr. Hanson is going through some serious medical stuff, so our prayers go out to him.
Right.
But I think it was him. I heard others have said this, that one of the things that basically destroyed Washington was air conditioning. Because Washington, people think about the winter, but the summers in Washington were brutal. And
They are
so,
hot and
they didn't
humid.
come up there and hang out, but now they're there 24/7, 365 because of heating and air conditioning. So maybe they just need to cut the air conditioning so they can't be up there all the time. I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, you would get you'd get fewer people running for office, that's for sure. And the ones that are there to do some work and get stuff going like it should.
And we wouldn't have near as many people in Florida. Whether that's a good or bad thing, I don't know. But
Yeah,
one of the
that'd be a
low
good thing.
points, and I would say probably for me the lowest point that we had in 2025 was clearly the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I really think that was a low, but at the same time, God has, and I'm not saying it's God's will that he get assassinated. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the Lord works in mysterious ways. And the next video I want to play is Erica Kirk at the basically the memorial funeral service for Charlie Kirk, and what she said there, because she has taken what is obviously a devastating for her personally and her family, and now turned it into what could be a movement that was changing America, but could really change things moving forward. So I want to play this quick snippet, and then I'll turn it back to you, Ted.
Sure.
On the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him.
I mean, Ted, I don't know if I could do that, but it's amazing what she continues to be able to do. And like I say, I think one of the low points was her husband's assassination, but clearly one of the high points is what's happening with Turning Point USA. And in general, it seems like a lot of young people are turning back to faith and that type of thing. And if that trend continues, it's got to be good for the country.
No, it really does, because that's the generation that really is inheriting this country, and it's a mess right now. But you're talking about low points. Charlie Kirk's assassination was definitely a low point. But then you look how the year started. Earlier on, you had the Trump assassination the previous year. I mean, that was bad enough. And then the second attempt on him, and then the mass shootings that we had. It seems like we had more mass shootings than we've had. And then the violent trans movement. Here's the trans movement. They want to be recognized, but there's this violent faction of them that is doing all these terrorist attacks. Then you look at our debt. That's a low point. I mean, our debt is at 38.4 trillion. We're spending over 3 billion. And the vitriol of the people on the left, the ones that aren't conservative, that really believe in America, of going after the rule of law on immigration, or anybody. The guy on the bus that stabbed Irina, I forget her last name, but stabbed that young lady. The one that happened, we saw them all over here in our town, right down the road from us in Fruitland. Person went up and stabbed the lady 40 times in a Dollar General. It just seems like society is getting more to the point of exploding. They're getting real short fused, and that's a low point. And I hope this year we can get away from that, and people see the beauty of America and the possibilities of what can happen in this country if we stay the course. And that's the problem. You're staying the course. We've got to make sure we stay on this course.
Yeah, well, you mentioned about all that violence, and I was reminded that last year, New Year's Eve, Sugar Bowl, and all that kind of stuff, we had that violence in New Orleans where people were killed by a terrorist attack and all that. We didn't have that this year, and part of it could be luck, part of it could be planning. I know they took out that terrorist cell that was going to attack in LA supposedly on New Year's Eve. So we were blessed that we didn't really have something like that happen this time around. Hopefully it was because we were prepared for it. I think that's part of it. And maybe, hopefully, American people are waking up and will change. I think that is yet to be determined.
Well, you look at what else is going on in Washington. You look at how Trump has brought in a team. You mentioned Kristi Noem, Tom Homan. You look at Pam Bondi as the Attorney General, Kash Patel. They are going through and cleaning up as much of the deep state as they can, but it's an ongoing process. You're not going to do it in a 2-year block. And that's what President Trump has to work with, is that 2-year block. We're halfway through that. If he wins the majority again, he can continue that. But that thing needs to be flushed down. They need a big bottle, 50-gallon drums of Drano to flush that swamp out. Because that part will stay after Trump leaves. And that's why I say you've got to go back and rewrite these laws. When they got rid of the Chevron deference, which allowed the administrative states, and those are like your EPA, Department of Labor, all these agencies, it gave them authority pretty much to make their own laws and with no oversight. That got overturned by the Supreme Court. It passed in 1984 when the Chevron deference went into effect, allowing all these agencies to have that power. Congress, if they write laws, and I've talked to many members about it, I've not seen any of them bring it up, but they all agree this would be a great thing. If Congress would write a law, here I'm talking about more laws, but this is to restrict government, of saying what an agency may do and what they shall not do, we won't go back into the administrative state when Trump leaves. And this is so important. And so people that are listening, talk to your representatives about this. If you're not sure how to phrase this, call John and I or send us an email, and we can talk to you about how to talk to the representatives to codify these changes into law so that when Trump exits, it doesn't go right back, because the deep state is still there. They've just been put on notice for right now.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're going to talk about basically the year 2026 upcoming, how, we think it's a pivotal year in our nation's history and really in world history. And we're going to get down into some nitty-gritty details, so to speak. Take us to break, Ted.
No, we look forward to talking to you, and we've got several things coming up. We definitely want to go over the inauguration of Zohran Madani, and it'll be it'll be flanked and joined by your 3 favorite socialists, AOC, Bernie, and I think there was one other one.
AOC,
anyways.
Bernie, and also I saw Susan Sarandon there.
Susan
Hollywood
Sarandon
or whatever.
Yeah, got to have some Hollywood bling.
Absolutely. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Although the owner of Lewis Oil Company maintains she is 29, Lewis Oil turns 60 years old in June. Chevron would like to recognize the North Florida second-generation family-owned business, celebrating its growth and staying power. Lewis Oil Company maintains significant on-hand supplies, strategically located fuel depots, a delivery fleet, on-site service, fuel card locks, and convenience stores. Lewis Oil Company understands its responsibility in the local economy by providing service and delivery on demand and in crisis. As a first responder for 18 Florida counties and the Southeast from Texas to Virginia, we are proud of this rare accomplishment. Lewis Oil delivers.
This is Ward Scott, and I want to thank all our sponsors who keep the show going and pay the bills. The Ward Scott Files premium sponsors are Crime Prevention Security Systems, large enough to serve you, small enough to care.
Meldon Law, the only official injury partner of the Florida Gators.
The Ward Scott Files Gold sponsors are Lewis Oil Company,
Shoot GTR,
On the Spot Dry Cleaners, R&R Construction, and Style Cuts. If you are interested in promoting your business on the show, you can visit our website, www.wardscottfiles.com, and click on the Advertise Here banner on the right side of the page, or call my friend Freddie at 352-284-3733. Again, thank you to all the great businesses that support the Ward Scott Files. And remember, if you like the show, thank our sponsors and support the businesses that support us.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. May God have mercy on your soul.
Or that very much surprises me that you've never been tased.
You can't handle the truth.
All bees poop.
Like a warthog. He's going to come up the steps. Here he comes. Oh my goodness, and he's huge. Hello, boy. I wonder if we can pet him. Hi, boy.
Can we touch him? No, don't.
Help me! Help! Help!
Well, welcome back to the 3 Ps, the Political Pirate Podcast. Happy New Year once again from the old salty dog here and the captain of our ship, Mr. Ted Yoho. Well, Ted, I want to talk about some things here, both domestically, and we'll get into some foreign policy about the upcoming 2026. Right off the top, the thing I think is going to probably be the defining thing, you never know, but what we know right now actually is going to happen towards the end of the year, which is the midterm elections, because the way they go is going to determine whether Donald Trump is even going to stay as president, because we know they'll impeach him if they can.
They will.
Whether or not he's going to be able to carry out his full America First agenda. So what are your thoughts on that coming into 2026 and how critical that is?
Well, that's why you and I are on the air. We want to educate people, motivate them, and activate them. This is so important that we get this right. If not, he's going to be hamstrung. They will impeach him in the House. There's no doubt about it. I saw a clip from Mark Kelly that wants to go after him right now. And he's the senator from Arizona. His wife is Gabby Gifford. And, they're all hell-bent to throw Donald Trump out of office. And if he gets out of the office, then you got to worry about all the civil lawsuits that are still pending. And so it's important that people understand what's on the line here. We have corrected course a little bit from where we were going. We're falling fast into socialism, but socialism is around the country. All you have to do is look at New York, Washington State, Arizona, some of these other states, Detroit, Philadelphia, and it's here, and it's insipidly growing slowly in America to where the new generation but the ones that are going to come up after Generation Z, they're going to only know socialism. They're not going to know what a constitutional republic is. And that's why it's so important that we teach what history is, where we came from, where we're going, and we get it right. And we're on the corrected path now, the beginning of that. And that's all on the line, John, as you brought up.
Yeah, absolutely. And something nobody really talks about. Right. If we were to lose President Trump, and if the Democrats get back in charge in some form or fashion, we could end up losing the Supreme Court as well, because there's every possibility that we'll have at least one retirement, let alone anything else that could happen during the next 3 to 4 years for sure. And certainly by the time someone else comes in a term after Donald Trump. So that's something you always have to keep in mind.
Let me add to that. They will change the Supreme Court because
they're going to come. If nothing else, right?
They're going to pack it, and they'll pack it so heavily that you can only imagine what the policies will be. Allowing children to have sex transformation surgeries at any age, just all the silliness that we went through with Rachel Levine and Sam Brinton that were in the Biden White House, parading around the world as representatives of America. And it's not who America is. Yeah, there's those kind of people in the country, but it's not the majority. And the flying LGBT flags at our embassies around the world, they should never do that. It should be the American flag and, the MIA and POW flag. But it should never be any of these social issues. But that'll happen when we come back. And I can't tell you how many ambassadors have called me since I've been out of office talking about that issue, how it's driven a wedge in our relationships with those countries. Just that issue. And so we have to make sure you said if the Democrats get back in charge, at some point the Democrats will be in charge. But if we have the policy set that are American policies, it'll be harder for them to change them, and they'll have to abide more by those.
Yeah. Well, Ted, you just inspired me.
That's my
on this
job,
thought.
John.
Because I tease Ted, but I got a lot of respect for him being a large animal vet. And you talked about gender surgery. Well, as a vet, and I've done it myself as a rancher myself, I've done gender changing, so to speak, because you turn, you steers, you turn bulls into steers. Well, there's two reasons why they do that. One is to make them fatter and gain weight quicker, and the other is basically to be more docile and all of that so they can be slaughtered and marketable. So people tend to forget that. That's the reason why you make a bull a steer. It's not to improve their masculinity, it's to make them fatter, softer, and more docile. Am I right?
Well, that, and there's another one. And that's to eliminate that gene pool that you don't want, those traits you don't want.
That might be a positive thing.
Well, that's the hidden thing in what they're doing, is that they'll prevent that from reproducing. That was the one thing that AOC said that was smart, that I agreed with. She said, I don't want to raise children. I don't want to have children and bring them in this environment. I'm like, thank God.
Well, and the thing is, I was just thinking about this too, that the way the left acts, there's ways to demasculate men, which they've done pretty well without actually changing their quote gender, and they seem to be trying to do that. But Ted, let's talk a little bit about the midterms in this sense, because my question is, what's going to motivate the voters to get out and vote in a certain way? Is it going to be the economy? Because like Clinton famously said, it's the economy, stupid, and that kind of thing, which I'd absolutely agree with. Donald Trump seems to be focused on that to a certain extent. But of course, the left is pushing this quote word affordability, which kind of ties into that. So what role do you see that playing, and what can we do to make sure that it moves in the direction that motivates the type of voters we want?
Well, you're talking about motivating people, and I think it's just a basic tenet of humanity. People either are running for something or they're running away from something. The things they're running for are the things that make them comfortable, pleasure, things like that. The things that they run away from are things that are painful. They don't want. It's obnoxious, and so if you just showed the comparison of what's out there, we need to promote the good things. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, the American dream. And that comes from opportunity. And that opportunity in this country, that people all over the world want to come to this country, is for opportunity. And those values and tenets of that are enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, and they should be revered by all in America, not despised. Like Tim Kaine, who said our rights come from government, not Senator Tim Kaine. For people that don't know, Tim Kaine, the senator from Virginia, said your rights don't come from a creator, they come from government. And those people shouldn't even be in Congress. So we need to motivate people on the basic principles of America and what they bring to the people that we do. And I know you're going to play that clip of Madani, because there's something I want to comment on that ties right into this.
We'll get into him in just a minute for sure. Well, and then so as far as voters too, public safety, immigration, these types of things, healthcare, I think is going to be a huge issue. Whether it should be or not, it's another story, but it's going to be. And we talked a little bit about the impending potential shutdown. The Democrats, the smart ones anyway, are going to try to make it all about that, because they really believe that that is a winning issue. And of course, they want to bring up Trump himself. I don't think that necessarily is a winning issue, but this healthcare issue concerns me, not only because healthcare is certainly important, but the way the left may use it to try to win the midterms and ultimately defeat President Trump.
Well, you're right. And, you look at this whole healthcare thing. This is the problem. The healthcare thing, I won't say thing, the healthcare debate that we're having in this country. Look at how this came about, where we're at today. is from what they passed in 2010 or 2011 on Christmas Eve at midnight, a 2,600-page bill that nobody read called the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. So 2010, 2011, I can't remember that. I think it was 2010. That bill got signed into law, and we've been dealing with that for 15 years, John, to fix healthcare. It hasn't worked. It's only gotten worse. And if you listen to Obama, this was a temporary measure to go to universal health care. That's what they want. That's what they're on the striving to do. And they're succeeding at it because you're getting Republicans saying, well, we've got to vote for extending the subsidies because there's going to be people lose health care in my district. Instead of saying these subsidies should never have been added, they added them during COVID. It was supposed to expire at the end of January. They've punted the ball down the road until January 30th or December. They're supposed to go away September 30th. They've punted till January 30th. And the same fight's going to come back to extend healthcare subsidies for a program that should have ended in 2025 due to COVID. So this whole discussion about this healthcare, and I was really hard about this when I ran because I don't think I should be responsible for everybody else's healthcare. I think you as a family, if you have a family unit, you're responsible for your family. Now, granted, there's people, the elderly, the disabled, the people that are really can't afford healthcare. Yes, we should cover that. But for everybody else, if you're, 75 pounds overweight, you're smoking, you're drinking, you're doing drugs, do you really care about your health care? But yet I'm going to get taxed to have to pay for that. And that's an argument you and I may differ on, but I'm just real adamant about that. And I think a big part of that is I grew up broke. And I think it's personal responsibility, and we'll help the people out that need the help.
Well, the thing that's the most frustrating about it to me, and I think we're seeing evidence more and more of this, like what's happening in Minnesota, and we're seeing the investigation expanding. I mean, even in Maine, I didn't realize how the Somali effort, and I'm not totally blaming them, but is across different parts of, especially all across the north. But if we just eliminated all the fraud and misuse in all these welfare programs, including Obamacare, and I never want to not give enough credit to John McCain for Obamacare as well, because he deserves a lot of credit or blame for it as well. But if we could eliminate all the fraud, we would probably have enough money right now to take care of the American people, whether you agree with how to do it or not.
We really would. I mean, you look at the Somali community in Minnesota, but that happens in all over America in all kinds of nationalities and races. I mean, it's just fraud. People do those kind of things because there is no check on it. Very few, it's kind of like the drug cartels. When I was in Congress, the DEA said that they feel like they catch about 2% of the drugs coming in. So if I'm a drug dealer and I'm only going to lose 2% of my product and I got 98% coming in, it's a great business model. I got 2% shrinkage basically. And that's the way the fraud thing is. There's very few people get held accountable. It'll be interesting. I had somebody ask me the other day, yesterday, in fact, do you think any of these people in these communities that were doing the fraud are going to go to prison? I said, I think some will. Do I think enough will? No. They'll set an example, but I think everybody ought to go, and it ought to be harsh. And I think we also we need to start throwing people off. And the Republicans in the big beautiful bill that had dealt with food stamps, they put in the work requirements, and these were the same work requirements that Bill Clinton did, that he bragged about, that Obama waived with his phone in his pen through an executive order and canceled those. And that was in 2014, I think. And we've been trying to put those back in the Farm Bill to where the work requirements, and they're basic work requirements, and they're there now. But if the Democrats come in, those all go away.
Absolutely. Well, let's shift gears just a little bit and touch on some world affairs type things, because Donald Trump gets criticism and and praise for what he's doing on the world stage. But I just want to touch on a few that are kind of concerning me. We mentioned this a little bit on Monday's show, but now a little bit more details are coming out. In Venezuela, apparently the CIA, certainly under direction of the federal government, I guess.
It was a covert operation that Trump told everybody about.
Right. And I think that probably wasn't by mistake. But they attacked a port. It's still a little bit sketchy with a drone where supposedly the narcotics are coming out, where they're shipping all that kind of stuff. So it seems like things are escalating there. And I know you have concerns about it. So, Ted, share those with us. And how far do you think it's going to go in 2026? With Venezuela specifically, and apparently in the Caribbean in general right now?
I don't have the privilege of having the information that the people in the administration have. I think it's a mistake. Maduro's been a problem. And I heard a podcast yesterday, and it was a pro-Venezuela intervention and one that was negative. And the guy that wanted the intervention was Venezuelan. And he said 90% of the Venezuelans side with America, and they want liberty and freedom. We try to give liberty and freedom in Iraq. Remember Operation Freedom? The Iraqi people don't want to know what liberty and freedoms are. You can't give somebody something that they're unwilling to fight for. And that's what I see in Venezuela. If the Venezuelan people were rising up and protesting and fighting and doing all those things, that would be one thing, but I'm not seeing that. If it's happening, it's not in the news the way it should be. And I think what we need to do is be supportive of the Venezuelan people, be supportive of the people that won the election, and put the sanctions on Maduro and enforce the sanctions, I think is what we need to do. But again, we can't do it by ourselves. Blowing up those docks, those are docks that China built. China is now coming to the table on this, says we will not cede any territory or any influence in Latin America. And so we're escalating this on a world stage. And we've never had a world war in our hemisphere. This could be the nidus for that starts that. Let's hope it's not, that calmer heads prevail. And I think if we go in there with the idea of a regime change, we've tried that before in many countries, John, doesn't work too well.
Well, Ted, you mentioned China, and let's go ahead and talk about that real quick right now too, because I know it's very important to you, and it should be, and it is me as well. But I don't really think the American people, in a whole, painting with a broad brush, truly understand the threat that China is to the world, but certainly to our way of life as Americans. What are your thoughts on that, and what can we do? I know we're trying to do it with our show, but what can be done to try to make the American people realize just how big a threat China really is? Because I don't think the American people as a whole totally get it myself.
No, they don't. People in Washington, the congressmen, don't get it. They have now. They've stepped up. But I talked about this when I first went in. Let me put it this way. Look at anything you buy, whether it's clothing, electronics, tools, even food products now. Look at where it's made. The majority of the things that we buy are made in China. We process chickens here. We raise them, slaughter them, ship them to China. China puts them back in food products and ship them back. When you have a country that controls rare earth minerals, they control the pharmaceuticals. They control 80% of the pharmaceuticals going to our military fighters. They have a big influence in telecommunications around the world. They control the major mines around the world for all your critical minerals. Critical minerals are everything that goes into anything that's electronic. When they control all of that, every time we buy something that is made in China, we're empowering China. And China's ultimate goal, and this is, Xi Jinping said this in the 19th Communist Party Congress in 2017. He said that the era of China has arrived. No longer will we be made to swallow our interests around the world. It's time for China to take the world center stage. going back to that book of Stephen Mosier's, The Bully of China, he maps out what their whole goal is, and it's a 5,000 year history. Their goal is to be the world hegemon, meaning they want to be the sole power in all the universe, in all the world, because they view themselves as the middle kingdom of the universe. Everything else is subservient to them. That's China's goal. So every time we buy a product that we don't make ourselves, we're empowering that regime to do that. And so that's what China is. That's what their goal is, and we need to wake up, because they're controlling our rare earth minerals. And you saw probably in the news that they put they control over 70% of silver in the world, and they put on export bans that they're only going to let a little bit out as people want it around the world. So the price of silver is shot way up, and there's predictions that may go up to $600 an ounce when it was between 40 and 50 for the last 2 or 3 years. Now it's up over 70. So that's China.
Go ahead,
That's China's goal. And, I mean, it's right out in front of us. They've talked about it. We know what's coming, and shame on us for not changing it. And I would like to see President Trump deal differently with the China policies.
Yeah, one of the things, when people are debating the tariff issue, and I think that they miss, okay, whether you're for tariffs, against tariffs, don't know about tariffs, whatever, is the fact that the left and some on the right, people are debating that the tariffs, against China are going to affect our economy and affordability and all of these types of things. Well, that's probably true, but the fact that that is true and part of the thing shows just how dependent we are on China, whether you're for, against, or neutral on tariffs. It's to me, the whole debate about that actually is missing the point, which is we are dependent upon what China does economically. I mean,
we really are.
Understand that.
We are. And China, we're already in war with China. The firing hasn't started in a regular war. Xi Jinping 2 or 3 years ago told his people, we need to prepare for war, and we need to learn how to live very cheaply, cut back on stuff. So he's telling his people that a couple of years ago, and they just came out not too long ago, within the last 3 months, saying we need to prepare for war. So they're telling their people to prepare for war. We would be as smart to do the same thing here, not to scare people, but just to realize what's coming. And why should we fuel economically a regime that wants to crush us? And all their actions show that they're preparing for war, and they're watching real closely what Putin and Trump are doing. Because if Trump cedes, or they agree to this peace deal, which is terrible for Ukraine, China's going to move right in on Taiwan.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk. We've talked a lot about Ukraine, Russia, but I just want to say this right now. I was, when President Trump, and I'm not blaming him per se, when he first came into office, I was fairly optimistic that maybe we could resolve this issue in Russia and Ukraine. At this moment, I'm not that optimistic, really. I don't see, and I hope I'm wrong. I hope that a month from now, or by the end of the year, we got peace in the Middle East. I mean, in the Middle East too, but in Ukraine, Russia, I'm not very optimistic at this moment, Ted.
Well, there will be a peace eventually that comes there. What it looks like, nobody knows. Right now, it's going to be really favoring Russia, and that again, that projects to Xi Jinping and China. Hey, what's the fallout if I do this and take over Taiwan? The fallout there, though, is we've got treaties with Japan and South Korea that, and Japan's already threatened us that if they take Taiwan, they're going to war with China. Japan is. And if they go to war with China, we go to war because of our treaty. And, this is where foreign policy and strong stances and letting people know where you stand, and just say, this is what we will do if you do this. You make the choice. And that's, we can take that to the drug boats, blowing them up. I think that should be our policy. If you bring drugs into America, it's a capital offense. In fact, I did an interview with Kent Justice on Fox News Jacksonville that airs Sunday, and we talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you mentioned, because we only got about 5 or 6 minutes left in the show. I apologize. I probably droned on a little too long about so, but I want to touch base
I helped you.
on Mr. Mondami, because he was sworn in yesterday as the mayor of New York City. Today, the lady from Seattle, Kate Wilson, is going to be sworn in, and she's essentially along the same lines as Mondami. But I want to play a quick snippet of Mondami's inauguration, if you will.
This
yesterday.
is important, yeah.
And let's look at it, and we'll kind of close out the show talking about it.
Zohran Mamdani will be the first Muslim mayor of our great city. He will be our first immigrant mayor in over a century. And he will be the youngest mayor of New York City in generations. But most importantly, Zohran will be a mayor for all of us.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support the Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the State of New York.
The Constitution of the State of New York.
And the Charter of the City of New York.
And the Charter of the City of New York. For too long in our city, freedom has belonged only to those who can afford to buy it. Our city hall will change that. These promises carried our movement to City Hall. And they will carry us from the rallying cries of a campaign to the reality.
Ted, I don't know what's scarier, Mondami actually being up there front and center, or the people that basically were inaugurating him, Bernie Sanders and AOC. That Three Stooges triumphant right there, man, is pretty scary.
It really is scary, because that's a sign of the times and things to come. There's some things he said that I think people really need to listen to. But before I talk about that, AOC said he's the first Muslim mayor of a great city. He's the first immigrant in over a century, the youngest in a generation, and he'll be a mayor for all of us. And then he goes on and says, for too long in our city, freedom has only belonged to those who could afford it and buy it. Our city hall will change it. Now, here's a guy saying freedom is only available for those that can buy it. And they go after, keep in mind, he's a member of the Democratic Socialists back in America, John. If you don't like your job, get another job. If you're not making enough money, do like you and I and my wife did. We worked 2 and 3 jobs at the same time, during the week. And so they want to make it sound like these rich people have taken all this money away from you and you don't get any. Instead of saying, let's come together, and if you want to make a lot of money, make a lot of money. This is the land of opportunity, and you can do it. Just change your dynamics. The stuff they're selling makes me sick, and how people fall for this garbage. I want to know what he's going to do and have City Hall change it.
Yeah, true. Well, one of the things he said, Ted, 2 things really stood out to me. That he talked about the term rugged individualism and how we got to get away from that to collect. He literally used the term collectivism. Well, if people need to look these words up, because rugged individualism is essentially the essence of the U.S. Constitution and the whole American way of life. It is about individuals, not large groups. But he literally said we got to move away from that and go to collectivism, which is, I give him credit for being direct. And then the other thing, Ted, is he said he literally signed an executive order changing the rules and regulations about the definition of anti-Semitism. And he took out the word Zionism, as anti-Zionist is no longer hate speech and no longer anti-Semitic, which basically means the end of Israel, because that's what Zionism essentially means. So from the river to the sea, and globalize the intifada, he's actually implementing it on day one.
He sure is. Again, he's a member of that party, and that party says we want a democracy that creates space for us all to flourish, not just survive and answer the fundamental question of our lives with the input of all. We want to collectively own the key economic drivers that dominate our lives, such as energy, production, and transportation. You know, you can't collectively own that. Somebody has to run it. I mean, GRU in Gainesville is a great example of kind of a collectivism of a power company being operated by people that don't know how to run a power company. That's why they have some of the highest power rates in Florida. Everything he's saying that they want is already there, but they're just mad. And you got to look at him. How did he get where he is? How did AOC get to where she is? Or Bernie, how did he get to where he is with multiple homes? Did the wealthy people, the billionaires, did they take that from him or prevent him from getting it? It's all a bunch of BS, and it makes me sick that these people are even in power.
Yeah, well, I've encouraged people to look at the whole video of the inauguration, about 30 minutes long, because if you really know history like what you and I know, it's pretty frightening to people like us, because Bernie's talking about, economic justice and everything, and they start chanting tax the rich. But one thing I will give Mondami credit for is he's not apologetic about it, and I take him at his word, because he literally said that he was elected as a socialist and he's going to govern as a socialist.
Democrat
so at least
socialist.
He's telling you straight up. There's no surprise here. He's telling you straight up, and all you got to do is look at any place where socialism is thriving, which is or when I say thriving is the driving force, and people don't run there. When you look, when the Berlin Wall fell, which direction did people run? East or west? Because they ran to freedom. People come to freedom. Nobody, Cuba does not have a problem with people trying to pour into it. Neither does Venezuela. Neither does China by that. So I give him credit for telling the truth. I just hope we're actually hearing the truth.
Well, and one last thing I want to say before I comment on that, it says, Democrat Socialists of America, we want a democracy powered by everyday people. The capitalist class tells us we are powerless, but together we can take back control. I mean, that's all BS, John. The power's there if we become engaged in it. And the words that Madami said he said exactly what he's going to do. And you know who else said that? Obama. We are going to fundamentally transform America. I want the listeners to think back over the last 15 years. How much transformation of America more do you want? New York City, how much more transformation do you want? Because what they're selling you is a race to the bottom. Everybody collectively will be miserable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to have to close it out with that. We're going to pick up this topic again on Monday, because I think it's really important. Take us out, Ted.
No, I think it is. And we look forward to educating people, because this is happening right in front of us. And people they'll look back 10 years from now and say, how did we get here? We got there because we didn't act now. What we do today will determine the direction of this country 10 to 15 years from now. So we have to stay vigilant. We have to grow our numbers stronger, and we need to make sure we win the midterms. And it's only going to come by people becoming educated, motivated, and activated.
Absolutely. Well, have a great weekend, everybody. Peace out.
Yep. See you Monday.